Welcome to Biology 1020 and Biology 1027, Principles of Biology. I am Dr. Jibo Zanzo, and I will be your instructor for this semester. So just to get started, Lesson 0 applies to every course you're going to take from here on out. Do not ask, will this be on the exam? Ever. And not just to me, to any professor. And you're probably wondering why? Why not? And the answer is because the people who teach you are not in this business because we share a passion for writing exams and for grading exams. We have a passion for the knowledge that we are conveying to you. So when you ask, will this be on the exam? It seems like you have little regard for the things that we are teaching you, and your concern lies solely in what is the least amount of effort you can do to get the grade that you want. And that's kind of offensive. And so we have a code that I will relate to you, at least for the purposes of this class. And the question that I would prefer you to ask is this important? And when you ask, is this important, I understand that your meaning is, will this be on the exam? But really, when you ask if something is important, I say, yes, this is important. That's because it's something that you will take with you to future classes. It's something that you absolutely need to know to succeed and to be considered competent in the field that I'm teaching you. So is this important is a better way to assess our shared mutual interest. Okay. So at the beginning of each chapter, I'm going to flash up a set of learning objectives, as well as putting a PDF of these learning objectives for each chapter as on the Canvas page. So notice that each learning objective starts with a verb, and that just reading the learning objective is not enough to demonstrate that you understand how to do what the objective is asking. So every learning objective starts with a verb, and every question on a quiz or exam is being written in a way that's going to assess your knowledge, skills, and abilities as they pertain to these learning objectives. So when people say, what should I be studying? This is the place to start, is with learning objectives. And I'm not going to read through these. I'm going to let you do that, take a screenshot, look at the PDF, something like that. So these are going to be revealed to you, how do you do these things as we move through the lecture. So let's go ahead and dive in. What is biology? You probably have a sense of what biology is. It's the scientific study of life. Okay, so that's it. Everybody ready to pack up, go home? We've figured out what biology is? No. The scientific study of biology, it begs two questions. What is science and what is life? So we're going to go after that second one about what life is first, and then we'll loop back and talk about what science is. So Velociraptor is famous for asking the deep questions. For example, what is life? So when you think of what life is, you probably have a sense of what living things are. You are alive, I'm guessing, or possibly a ghost, and if you are, I have no way of really knowing that. I don't have that skill set. So you are alive. All of the people that you know and have ever known have been alive, are alive. Human beings are alive everywhere. Also alive, probably things like your pets are alive. And the agricultural commodities such as chickens and cattle, those are alive, as are the plants that we eat, things like corn and wheat and rice and other things. So all of these things are pretty clearly alive. But there's also a lot of wild things out there that are also alive. So all other types of plants and animals, even the ones that we don't eat or encounter on a daily basis, these are also living things. And not just the things that we can see with our eyes, but there's a lot of life out there that is microscopic, that we is single celled, is invisible to us unless we have powerful microscopes. So when I tell you that this course is about all forms of life, a lot of what I'm talking about are things that you've probably never encountered. I've never encountered. So life is extremely diverse, and an even greater diversity of life on Earth has lived and gone extinct. Things like the dinosaurs and the trilobites and this thing up here, which is a marsupial tiger, which lived in Australia and is now thought to be extinct. It's not closely related to tigers, but you can see that the stripes on its backside here kind of give it a tiger-like appearance. Last one that was known to be alive died in captivity in the 1930s. So um, that's a species that's no longer with us. Also, many extinct species of plants and other things that I just mentioned. So a lot of life on Earth is not with us anymore. So this course is about the features of life that are found in all of these living things. And it's important to keep a broad view. And this is something that I will keep coming back to over the course of the semester when I say things like, this is something that applies to all living things. Don't just think like, oh, I'm doing this and my dog's doing this and maybe my pet jellyfish is doing this, but trilobites did this, and the mold that's growing on my orange is doing this thing. Okay, so I didn't mention this particular thing specifically, but you're probably wondering, because it's kind of at the forefront of everybody's mind, what about this thing? SARS coronavirus 2, also known as the coronavirus, the causal agent of COVID-19. Is this thing alive? And the shorter answer is not really. And part of this lecture, as we're talking about what life is, you probably can't help but think a little bit as to why would I say that this is not really alive. But not really is not really an answer. So it's not like I'm going to give you an exam and throw a question up there like this and expect that you're just going to click on that not really button and, hooray, points for you. The answer, the more important issues that we need to strike on, are kind of more open ended. And I'm not going to give you essay questions discussing whether or not the coronavirus is alive because I don't want to grade all of those. But this is important in the broader sense of this is something we need to think about as we face this global pandemic and this agent of disease. Okay, so what do all of these truly alive things have in common? And there are a lot of things, and it's not easy just to give a pat answer to what life is, but we know it when we see it. And there are 7 features that I'm going to hold you accountable for, which you're probably trying to scribble these down, hoping I don't advance the slide. But don't worry, I'm going to advance the slide, and we're going to march through these in order. I'm going to talk about each one of them. Okay, so 7 features of living organisms. 1, life is ordered and organized. Okay, so if we look at this picture of a tropical ecosystem, you might not see how it is ordered and organized. However, if you look at the succulents in the foreground here, you might notice that they have a very distinctive geometric pattern, almost like a spiral shape, to the arrangement of their leaves. And also, different plant species are going to grow in different parts of the forest according to their unique ecological needs in an ordered and organized way. And it's not necessarily something that we think about, but when we look at these plants, we notice that all of their leaves are above ground and that their roots are growing below ground. And that just makes sense. But that is something that is true of all of these plants, and in that way, they are ordered and organized, and that they know where to put the particular parts of the plant so that they function efficiently. In addition, all of these plants grew from a seeds, just a few cells, into a collection of all of these plant parts. Okay, so life responds to its environment. The physical environment is changing and changeable. Day and night, seasons, sun and rain, living things demonstrate responses to all of these and other types of changes. For example, this orchid plant here appears to be leaning towards the window, and that's exactly what it is doing in order to photosynthesize, which is something we'll talk about in chapter 10. Life reproduces itself. What are these earthworms doing? Does it remind you of a particular number? Is that number 11? These earthworms are reproducing. Earthworms are hermaphroditic, which means they have both male and female organs in a single individual. However, they do not fertilize themselves. So, whether it's like us or not like us, the reason that these worms are doing this particular behavior is for the same reason, is that they are going to produce new organisms. While life is responding to its external environment, like the orchid leaning towards the window, living organisms also regulate themselves internally. What this animation here is showing are some plant cells, and inside those plant cells you can see green bubbles moving around. Those are the chloroplasts, which are moving to give the plant the best access to light. The chloroplasts are moving to where they're going to be best able to undergo photosynthesis. Again, that's going to be in chapter 10. Life grows and develops. Living things also grow and develop. The mushroom in this animation is sped up, but you can see how different types of structures are being formed. We start life as a single cell, but that cell divides trillions of times, and now you have lots of different kinds of cells. Cells in your ears that are listening to me, cells that are in your eyes watching this video, cells in your hands that are, doing hand things. And all these changes that occurred were part of the process of development from that first cell. That cell grew and divided and turned into lots of different types of cells. And that's what we call development. So life grows and develops. Energy processing. So energy is a theme we're going to see many times this semester. So chemical energy that is produced by cellular respiration is powering this hummingbird's wings to enable it to fly. The bird is going to feed on nectar from the flowers to get the chemical energy to convert into the energy that powers the muscles. And the flower is taking energy from the sun and converting that into the nectar. So energy is always changing forms in living organisms and ecosystems. Evolutionary adaptation. So life is an ancient process. I've already showed you some of the extinct forms of life that have existed in the Earth's ancient past. Now all living things possess evidence of changes that have enhanced their abilities to survive and reproduce. So, while those 7 qualities of living organisms separate living things from non-living things, here's a list of just a few additional physical properties of life as we know it here on Earth, and when you can expect to hear about them again. Okay, so currently, at present, as of this recording, all of the life that we know of, have ever heard of, is restricted to our planet. And more specifically to our biosphere. So we can look at life and living things from the perspective of the global all the way down to the atomic level. The biosphere is the most complex expression of life, and we're going to march through ever decreasing levels of complexity. They're all complex, but they decrease in complexity as we zoom down. Okay. So as I mentioned, the biosphere is the home to every person, dog, hog, cat, bat, rat, flower, moss, mold, insect, trilobite, dinosaur that has ever lived. So the biosphere is where we find all of the life that we know of in the universe. So is it the entire Earth? Well, really, it's just the outermost part of the Earth. As far as we know, life doesn't extend down into the Earth's core, doesn't really extend very far at all. The analogy that I've heard is that the biosphere would be like a thin coat of paint on the outside of a basketball, is where all the life on Earth lives. And as soon as you um, dig down very deeply, life can't exist. Once you leave the atmosphere, you don't really find life out there. So the biosphere is integrally connected to the atmosphere, to the hydrosphere, all of the water on Earth, and to the lithosphere, which is the mineral composition of the Earth. So the biosphere has many different ecosystems that overlap at their edges. In an ecosystem, all living things are in a localized area where they can interact with each other and with their physical environment. Okay, so this lovely tropical beach scene, hopefully you've gotten to see something like this in your lifetime, or will get to. So imagine that there's a sea turtle that's leaving the shallow ocean. She's going to come and lay her eggs on such a beach. So that's, the turtle interacting in different parts of the ecosystem. During a rainstorm, rivers are going to increase in flow, and that's going to cause a temporary and localized drop in the salinity or the saltiness of the ocean in that area. So there's a lot of things going on within an ecosystem. So ecosystems are comprised of different communities. And a community is all of the living organisms of the many different species that interact within a localized area. So, for example, in this coral reef, the coral animals are building up the reef with their calcium carbonate skeletons, and that reef is home to many different species of fish and other living organisms. Population is all of the individuals of a single species. For example, this school of fish. So all of the members of this population, they're going to eat the same things, they're going to share the same predators, and they're also all going to have the potential to mate with each other. But this is just one single species. So you probably have an intuitive sense of what an individual organism is. That was a weird way to say that. Organism. An individual organism is a member of a population. For single-celled organisms, the cell is the organism, but for you and me and all other plants and animals and lots of other things, multicellularity adds a few more layers of complexity to this relationship. So like this Nemo guy here, it's a single fish. So for us multicellular organisms, we are comprised of many interacting organ systems. For example, in this fish, the gills are going to bring oxygen into the body. And you might be wondering, well, why does it need oxygen so badly? And that's something that we're going to talk about in Unit 2. So organs and organ systems made up of a lot of different interacting parts. Then we zoom down to the cellular level. And if you are a single-celled organism, you are not. You could have skipped those last couple of, you could have skipped that organ and organ system part. But for us, for the single-cell organisms, that single cell is all you require to be alive. Cells that are microscopic, they're the least thing that you can be in order to be considered alive. Because a single cell can demonstrate all of those fundamental qualities of life. Sorry, viruses. But in order to carry out those fundamental living qualities, cells have to have structures that divide up the work, kind of like the organs in a multicellular being. So actually, the name organelles is a word that means tiny organs. For example, here's an organelle that you may have heard of before. It's a mitochondrion. You've probably heard a little something about that before. Organelles are comprised of molecules. These are smaller parts still. And we're almost at the end here. So, molecules are collections of the smallest bits of stuff that biologists really are concerned with, which are atoms. So, molecules are arranged in fixed ratios, meaning that the same number of atoms are assembled in the same way to form the same type of molecule. What we're looking at here is a molecule of an enzyme called ATP synthase. And you can, if you look at it, you can see there's lots of little tiny dots that make up the very brightly colored spinning structure in there. And those little tiny dots are the individual atoms. So finally, atoms, the smallest unit of matter that can be broken down by chemical means only. And we'll talk a lot more about atoms very shortly, by which I mean in chapter 2.